faster than anybody anticipated. The stock market, NASDAQ, just hit another record today, and the markets generally are just really a very small amount below where they were at the height of the market when we first had to do this about 4.5, 5 months ago. And it's incredible what's happened. When you look at education, my administration has approved $13 billion for state and local education. We've approved over $6 billion to support colleges and another $6 billion in emergency grants to students, very importantly. We waived standardized testing requirements, deferred federal student loan and interest payments. So you take a look at the student loan program, we've waived student loan and interest payments, and that is something that people haven't been hearing about, and nobody talks about it, but it's a big deal. We've pioneered new treatments that are dramatically improving the health outcomes. Vaccines are doing very well. Therapeutics are doing very well. The therapeutic research has been incredible, and I think you're going to have a lot of big things happening long before the end of the year, both vaccines and therapeutics. Therapeutics is, I guess, a little bit of a word we can use for on the way to a cure, but they make you better. I mean, to me, the therapeutic is even more important than the vaccine at this point because people will get better. But the numbers are, the testing numbers are the highest they've ever been. We're almost up to 40 million in testing, and 40 million people, which is unheard of, far more than any other country, many times what any other country is, and therefore we have more cases. Because we're doing more testing, we have more cases. If we did half the testing, we'd have far fewer cases, but people don't view it that way. What they have to view, though, is if you look at the chart, and maybe Mike has it, but we looked at it before, if you look at the chart of deaths, deaths are way down. So what we want to do is we want to get our schools open. We want to get them open quickly, beautifully in the fall. And as you know, this is a disease. It's a horrible disease, but young people do extraordinarily well. I was with the governor of New Jersey. We were talking, and he said and he mentioned a number which is a very high number, but it's a number nevertheless, thousands of people. There was only one person that died that was under 18 years old in the state of New Jersey, and that was somebody, I guess, had a problem with perhaps diabetes or something else. But one person out of thousands of people, one person died who was under 18 years old. So that's a pretty amazing stat when you think of it. But I'd like to now just give the mic to our First Lady. She's going to say a few words, and then we're going to go with Mike and Karen Pence. And then we'll go around the room a little bit, say a few words. And Kellyanne, you did a great job this morning. Thank you. Really great. So if I might, First Lady, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The first pillar of my Be Best initiative is children well-being and taking care of children's social, emotional, and physical health has never been more important than during the COVID-19 pandemic. The administration has worked around the clock to protect Americans from the coronavirus, but many challenges for children and families can be just as invisible as the virus and just as dangerous. When children are out of school, they are missing more than just time in the classroom. They're missing the laughter of their friends, learning from their teachers, and the joy of recess and play. For children with disabilities, without access to technology, or whose homes are not a safe place, the situation can be even worse. As the start of the school year gets closer, I encourage parents, teachers, and school to teach children about the importance of CDC guidelines and to implement them when appropriate. Children's mental health and social development must be as much of a priority as physical health. The same is true for parents. Many will be forced to make stressful choices between caring for their children and going back to work, and we must address those needs as well as their own mental health and well-being. As we continue to come together as Americans to tackle these challenges, I'm honored that you could all be here today to offer your thoughts. I look forward to working with you to make sure that Americans' children and families can be healthy and thriving. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Governor, thank you. I see you sitting over there. What a job you're doing.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much for being here, Governor. Appreciate it.
Proud to be here.
And thank you, Melania, very much. We just heard, Mike was telling me that Governor DeSantis is doing a terrific job. He just announced that the schools will be open in the fall, and we hope that most schools are going to be open. We don't want people to make political statements or do it for political reasons. I think it's going to be good for them politically, so they keep the schools closed. No way. So we're very much going to put pressure on governors and everybody else to open the schools, to get them open. And it's very important. It's very important for our country. It's very important for the well-being of the student and the parents. So we're going to be putting a lot of pressure on open your schools in the fall. Mike, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your leadership. I have seen it day in and day out since you asked me to lead the White House Coronavirus Task Force. And today is just one more installment in your commitment to make sure that our states and our families have all the resources they need to meet this moment. Our healthcare workers are provided for, but also understanding that we've got to reopen America and reopen America safely. But we convene all of these great leaders from around the country today, Mr. President, because you know that to open up America again, we need to open up our schools again. And I want to thank all those gathered here for their efforts as well. I know I speak on behalf of my wife, Karen, when I also want to express our profound gratitude to the First Lady throughout this pandemic. Her regard for families, for children, for the emotional impact that this has had on every American is so admirable. And I'd like to invite everyone to show your appreciation for our First Lady and the work she's done for American families. Mr. President, since the moment that we asked the American people to step up, to take efforts to slow the spread, and we, in that 15 days that would become 45 days, we encouraged people to refrain from attending school, if possible, to engage in school from home whenever it was possible. There were two categories of heroes that emerged. One was the parents around America who stepped up as never before. And those that are looking on, those that are represented here should know. Your president, the first family, your vice president, and our second family are grateful for the families of this country and everything you've done to be the teachers for your children, to create the structure at home where they could continue to learn even in a challenging time. I also want to say how grateful we are to the teachers, Mr. President, and I'm actually sitting next to one who I've been married to for 35 years. As you know, she actually teaches in a local school in the Washington area a few days a week, and I watched her go in and pack up crates of art materials that children could come by and pick up and take home to continue their learning. And so I'd like to invite everybody to show your appreciation for the parents and all the great teachers who have done the work of continuing to educate our children throughout this pandemic. It's truly been inspiring. And Mr. President, the American people deserve to know that while we are seeing rising cases across the Sun Belt, at your direction, we're ensuring that states have the resources, the support, the supplies, and personnel that are actually arriving as we speak in states like Texas and Florida and elsewhere to relieve healthcare workers. And to your point, I hope the American people appreciate the point that you made yesterday on the national stage and did so again today, that because of what our healthcare workers have done, because of the innovation and the medicines that we've been able to make available, literally we have seen fatalities decline by 90% from some of the worst moments of this pandemic. And we're going to continue to work each and every day to continue to keep those losses low and steady. We're going to save lives as we reopen our country. Today, Mr. President, as you know, we spoke to the nation's governor on the topic of this summit, we reflected on the fact, as now 47 governors and the governors of 2 territories have announced plans to reopen schools across America, that it's important to do so for a variety of reasons. The First Lady just spoke of this. We ought to well be concerned about children falling behind academically, and there's no substitute for in-classroom learning, for in-person learning, and that's been much discussed at the summit today. But as the American Academy of Pediatrics, so well represented here today, recently reflected, there are social costs, emotional costs, and even physical costs to our children across this country that we spoke of the governors today. It's important that we reopen our schools, as you've directed, for the academic and the intellectual development of our children, but it's also vitally important that we remember, as Dr. McCants-Katz told the governors today, that 7 million American children suffer from either mental illness or emotional disturbance, and they principally receive the care from health and mental services at their school. And so making sure that we're meeting the mental and emotional needs of our children, as well as making advances academically, is what brings us here today. The last thing I'll say to all those gathered here, Mr. President, is from early on you have directed our task force and the CDC to equip families and schools and states with the resources to operate. It was as early as March 12th that CDC issued its first guidance for strategies for school and child care services. We issued decision trees in the middle of May, and just last week, I'm pleased to report the CDC published new guidance for K-12 schools and higher education regarding the type of testing that is appropriate and other strategies. Mr. President, we can bring our schools back. And next week, the CDC is going to issue 5 new documents, how to prepare communities to return safely, decision-making tools for parents and caregivers, symptom screening, cloth face coverings in school settings, guidance, and the rest. We're going to continue to flow these resources and this guidance, but as Dr. Redfield told all the nation's governors today, and I want to acknowledge Governor Parsons' leadership and his presence here today, we're truly grateful, is that what you've instructed our task force to do and the CDC to do in this moment is to say to states around the country and to local communities, we're here to help. The CDC has issued guidance, but that guidance is meant to supplement and not replace state, local, territorial, or tribal guidance. In a word, Mr. President, you've made it clear to us, we don't want to be the reason any school doesn't reopen. And so our word to the parents that are looking on, to teachers that are looking on, administrators, leaders in your community, is that we are ready to work with the leaders in your school system and in your state to find a safe and responsible way to reopen your schools. That's our commitment. Mr. President, we're continuing to move out on that, on the belief that to open up America again, we've got to open up America's schools. And the American people are taking important steps every day, including this summit today, to do just that. And I'm truly grateful for all of those represented here for being a part of this important work. With that, I'd be happy to recognize Mrs. Pence for a few comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mike, and Melania. I had the privilege of addressing this group earlier today and kind of opening up your summit. But I do want to say thank you to all the teachers. I know at my school, everybody quickly learned how to do online teaching. It wasn't something that our teachers across America were familiar with, and I just applaud them. They have worked so hard. And the parents really are the unsung heroes. They really had to quickly get up to speed, and it was not easy to do. But you know, our kids are struggling, and they need their friends, and they need their teachers, and they need their routines. This decision to open up the schools greatly impacts our children. It impacts them academically, it impacts them socially, and it impacts them emotionally. So I applaud what you're doing here today, Mr. President, because our kids, for their mental health and their academic health, they need to be back in school. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. I appreciate it. And I see Dr. Redfield over in the audience, and I appreciate it. And I know you'd like to see everybody coming back and getting back to school in the fall. And I've read everything you've written, and I appreciate that very much, Doctor. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Governor, please. Thought maybe we'll go around the room real quickly. We'll go quickly, and we'll get everybody to say a few words, and we'll start with our governor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you said when you come here, I'm just honored and humbled to be here, sitting with you, the Vice President, the First Lady, and the Second Lady.
It's our honor.
Those dreams you think about someday, you never imagine them being reality, but here we are. And so it's an honor to be here today. Let me first start off by just saying thanks to the President, the Vice President, for what they've done over the last, well, since they've been in office, to say the least. But over the last 17, 18 weeks, they've been on the phone every week. The President himself has been. And I don't mean for 5 minutes to say hello, governors, and see you later. In-depth conversation with governors across this state. The Vice President has been there for almost 17 to 18 weeks. I know that I've been following with them. And the one thing they've stressed every day in those phone calls, every week, they're trying to do the best thing for this country and for the everyday people out there, and they were trying to make their full support to the governors across this state. And I just want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
For leading as what good leaders do in times of crisis. And I just want to thank you for that. When the President said he was going to put a little pressure on governors to open these schools up, I will tell you this, on a few phone calls I've had with him, he can put a little pressure on you if he decides to do that. I will say that on that. So sometimes we all need a little push to get things going. What the First Lady said when she talked about the kids was so important to me as a grandparent, as a father. I sit there and I think of all the kids that need to be in school. There's the ones that have the privilege of going every day. That's almost common that we go to school for most of the school kids, but a lot of school kids, it's a safety blanket. It's a way to get nutrition. It's a way to get counseling. It's a way for somebody to help them when they cry out for help. And that's also why getting schools back open is so important. And then if you want to take that one step further, it's about making sure people are going to be qualified for the workforce of tomorrow. This virus cannot shut our country down or our states down. We have to deal with it as we would anything else that we've dealt with in this country, and we have to move forward. And economy and life goes on, and education is part of who we are, and kids need to get back in school. Parents need to get more involved in their schools and be back involved in their schools. As I heard speakers today speak, it's part of who we are. It's how we build a future, and I think that's so important. I also want to thank the Second Lady for giving me a little inspiration on a couple of key bills we signed in Missouri, and I want to give you a little credit today. We did full reciprocity in the state of Missouri yesterday. I signed that bill, and full military reciprocity, and the Second Lady kind of gave me a little inspiration for that. And also my daughter's a school teacher. To do that, most of the time we have a father-daughter relationship, except when it comes to teaching, and she becomes a senior advisor to the governor when we talk about those issues on that. But again, I just want to thank the President for his support for our state. People appreciate it, Mr. President. I want you to know that, for the First Lady, and for where we're headed in this country, because we've went through hard times before, and we'll continue to get through hard times, and we'll be better off for it, and we'll be stronger than ever, so thank you.
And you won't be changing the name St. Louis, will you?
No, we will not be doing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very important. Thank you very much. Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'm delighted to join you, the First Lady, the Vice President, and the Second Lady here today to talk about why it's important for children to be in school. My name is Dr. Sally Goza. I'm a pediatrician from Georgia, and I'm president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Children get much more than an education at school. Being away from peers, teachers, and school services has lasting effects for children. Although this will not be easy, pediatricians strongly advocate that we start with the goal of having students physically present in school this fall. Of course, returning to school must be done safely. We must take measures to keep students, teachers, and staff safe and with flexibility to adapt as needed to the community's prevalence of COVID-19. The evidence we have so far indicates that children are less likely to have symptoms or severe disease resulting from coronavirus. Children are less likely to become infected, and they are less likely to spread infection. We know, however, that missing school can have serious consequences for child health and well-being, particularly for students with disabilities or with special health care needs. Students who are in school learn more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. They also learn social and emotional skills, get healthy meals and exercise, and mental health support. Schools help identify and address learning deficits, physical abuse, substance use, depression, and suicidal ideation. These are all critical reasons to get children back to school. Reopening schools in a way that maximizes safety, learning, and the well-being of children will clearly require new investments in our schools. We urge you to ensure that schools receive the resources necessary so that funding does not stand in the way of keeping our children safe or present at school. Thank you, Mr. President. We look forward to working with you and all the people around this room.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Penny Schwinn from the great state of Tennessee. Appreciate the invitation on behalf of our superintendents, our districts, our families, our teachers, and our public officials. Opening up Tennessee, we know that reopening schools reopens our economy. We've got great examples of where superintendents have come together and thought through scheduling to make sure that parents can get back to work for companies who support multiple regions. We've done an incredible job with resources, 20-plus toolkits. We've opened up free professional development for teachers and principals for free statewide and online tools. And I'd also like to just thank the First Lady for her support on child well-being. We had a wonderful conversation a couple of weeks ago on the task force that we've launched statewide, covering the entire state and making sure that all of our children receive a high-quality public education, as well as being served in terms of nutrition, transportation, et cetera. And I'll just end by saying, as the proud daughter of a police officer and a teacher, I was raised with safety and high-quality education being two fundamentals in my home. And it's a great honor to be able to reinforce that with the schools in Tennessee today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you. Alex?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Really, thanks to the historic response that the President has led to this unprecedented pandemic, we have the tools where we can reopen our workplace, we can reopen our schools, and we can reopen healthcare. We've got the tools. When we think about kids and schools, the school for our children is a center of so much of their life. It is where they get health care. It is where they get mental health care. It is where many of them get nutrition. It is where mandatory reporting of child abuse and sexual abuse happens most often because of the nature of mandatory reporting requirements. In addition to the social, physical, intellectual development that the kids need from a physical setting in schools. We're at a very different place now than we were 2 or 3 months ago. We have the world's most robust testing system with close to 40 million tests having been done. We have health system capacity and personal protective equipment to enable us to work through these outbreaks that we've got. We're advancing on therapeutics, as the President said. We now have remdesivir for hospitalized patients, steroids for lung illness. We have convalescent plasma to treat individuals. And just this morning, the President made a major $500 million investment in a monoclonal antibody that will be a treatment that could, if successful and if approved, could deliver hundreds of thousands of doses as early as late summer, early fall. We have 3 vaccine candidates, and just this morning invested $1.6 billion in a 4th vaccine candidate that could deliver hundreds of millions of doses this fall and into early next year. So it's just a very different circumstance than we ever had before. We know more about this virus. The fatality rate is going down because we're better at taking care of patients with the virus. Our fatality case rate in the United States is among the lowest, if not the lowest, in the developed world right now. and we can reopen our schools safely with what we know. And it's really simple practices of common sense. It's social distancing. It's wearing face coverings when you're in a setting that you can't social distance, and it's practicing good personal hygiene. The tools are there to bring our kids back safely, to protect our teachers and our staff, and it's time to do it now.
Thank you, Alex. Good luck with all of the therapeutics. I know you're getting very close, very close. That would be incredible. What are your chances early, like in September?
So Regeneron, which is the one that we funded at almost $500 million this morning, they are one of the most advanced. We have several very advanced monoclonal antibody products. This basically takes that convalescent plasma that recovered patients would donate and bioengineers that in effectively unlimited supply that we can do. And so it's a cocktail of multiple antibodies that give your immune system an immediate defense. And we're studying it both for preventing disease as well as stopping the progression of the disease. So it's really very exciting.
And that seems to be just working. It's basically, it's sort of the ABCs of what we're doing. It seems to be working. Do you have tests right now that say it does work?
Well, you've got the initial trial work that Regeneron did, and that's why we're investing in the late stage development of it. But then we have these other 3 therapies that, thanks to your leadership, we have so many more tools than we had 3 months ago in terms of therapeutics. So we don't want anyone to get sick, but we have much better ways to take care of individuals now than we did 3 months ago.
Okay, that's exciting, very exciting. All right, we'll hold you to it, September. You too, Doctor. You too, Doctor. Please, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'm Patrick Daly, the principal of St. Vincent de Paul High School in Petaluma, California. We're in Sonoma County. I just want to tell you what an honor this is to be here this afternoon. I want to thank you, thank the First Lady, Vice President Pence, and Second Lady for your leadership of our country. Really, during a very difficult time, for the First Lady's love and protection of children, very important to me. And being a father of 4 kids, three daughters and a son, it is very important. We plan on opening April 10th. That is our focus. I think that we have put a plan together that is a working document with all the safety precautions and policies in place to ensure that St. Vincent de Paul opens following all the guidelines that are recommended. I think that, as you stated earlier, this should never be political, and I think at times it has become very political in many school systems throughout our United States, and I think probably particularly in California. So we were very excited about the possibilities of the fall, and we have 3 plans. One would be the reopening, which we plan August 10th, and then a hybrid plan, which is 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days back in. And then, as I mentioned earlier, God forbid if we had to go back to the distance learning. I just don't think it's beneficial to boys and girls 14 to 18 years of age. And particularly, I really feel for the parents of elementary school children who are trying to work and provide for their families, and at the same time having to stay at home and teach. It's very difficult, and I hear that a lot from our own elementary school. But I can't thank you enough for your leadership of our country, and thank you for this honor.
Well, good luck with your plan and getting them open, and hopefully you can do 5 days instead of the 2 and back and forth. I know you want to be able to do that, so you'll try. Thank you very much. Great job. Please,
Hello,
good-looking person this is, huh?
Hello, Mr. President. I'm a student at St. Vincent de Paul High School. My name is Cameron Vaughn. And I personally just want to thank you for both inviting me and helping to reopen schools. Coming on behalf of the students, it really means a lot just to be able to get back out. And it means a lot to our emotional health and our mental health just to be out there with our friends, because a lot of us don't have that opportunity. And it helps reopen our schedules, so we have something to look forward to. Me, I'm a person of schedules. I run by a schedule, make a schedule for myself. So I just want to thank you very much for getting us back to that.
Great job, really great. Thank you very much. We'll get you back, okay? We'll get you back soon. Thank you. Kellyanne, please.
Mr. President, Mrs. Trump, Mr. Vice President, Mrs. Pence, thank you very much. I listened to Cameron Vaughn and I'm reminded why we're here in this room today on this very important topic, but why we're here in this administration. I believe a hallmark of the Trump-Pence administration has been the success in looking out for and expanding opportunities, safety, and well-being for the forgotten child. And the forgotten child took on a new meaning during this global pandemic. Between the first and third weeks of March of this year, just about 100% of our school children across this country, of all ages, were taken out of their schools and stuck at home. We saw a few things happen, many of which have been spoken about today, but I'll add one more. The digital divide was laid bare in that so many of our students could not access basic digital assets to allow them to confidently and competently complete their schoolwork and to learn and to thrive. The schools are our central nervous system because our students are the heart and soul of our nation. And so today your message is, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, that all children matter. And our mission is to make sure that all children can safely and securely re-enter their places of learning very soon. This has also impacted our economy, and I have a soft spot for single moms, having been raised by one, and our single moms have been disproportionately impacted through their job security, their wage earning, and most of them are not in jobs for which they can telecommute. So we're creating pandemics within this pandemic. The good news is that our children are at low risk for transmission, even as they are at high risk for maladies, visible and invisible. The great news is that as we safely reopen our schools, we are in keeping with so much of your agenda, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mrs. Trump, and Mrs. Pence, which is to preserve and expand educational opportunities, to respect the dignity of all students, but to respond to the individual needs of all of those students by expanding school choice and charters and educational freedom and opportunity scholarships, allowing them to have more options as they go through their lives, beginning with a quality and solid education. The President has said, if we as a nation can win 2 world wars, dig out the Panama Canal, put a man on the moon, we certainly ought to be able to deliver a quality education to each child. And that begins with reopening our schools and making good on that promise to each and every one of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kellyanne.
Hi, Mr. President. I'm Jenny Beth Martin with Tea Party Patriots. Thank you, and thank you, Mrs. Trump and Mr. Vice President and Mrs. Pence, for having me here today. While I am with Tea Party Patriots, I'm also a mom, and my children are sitting right over there, so thank you for having us here today. Mr. President, you are right, and I hope you will trust your instincts. America is not meant to be shut down, and we have to reopen schools this fall. I've been in touch with almost 1,000 doctors from around the country. I helped Dr. Simone Gold spearhead a letter to you signed by 800 physicians and surgeons who talked about the side effects of the lockdowns. I've done a second letter with over 150 doctors, 240 nurses, 330 educators, 70 national groups, and thousands of parents and concerned Americans who want to see schools reopened. Reopening schools is going to stabilize our society. I think it's the #1 most important thing we can do to stabilize our society from top to bottom. Whether it is in a local community, just reestablishing calendars, which churches, nonprofit groups, traffic patterns, people who don't have children care about the calendar for schools. Kindergartners and elementary school students simply cannot learn looking at a Zoom screen. If they could, we wouldn't need schools in the first place. We could just plop them in front of a television. The last place in the world a middle school student needs to be is online, unsupervised by adults. They bully each other when they're in front of teachers. You can't even imagine what's going on with social media right now. Young adults and high school students are losing hope and optimism for the future. And in February, they had so much. And now we turn on the television and we can see the destruction that lack of hope and optimism is causing. Employers have to rebuild their companies. They need employees at 110% to be able to do that. We did everything we could to flatten this curve, and we have to roll up our sleeves now and rebuild our companies. But we can't do that when employees are dividing their time between taking care of their children indefinitely for who knows how long, and trying to get their job done. I have one employee who has 5 children. His wife is a dental hygienist. I'm granting him as much grace as I possibly can, which is easy to do. He's a wonderful employee, but I can't even imagine what it would be like to have 5 children and all of a sudden have to homeschool them all. And it's not even homeschooling, it's helping them with digital learning. Homeschool parents have asked that we're careful about not conflating the two. For me, I'm a single mom now. In 2007, 8, and 9, I went through financial crisis. My then husband's business failed. We lost our house, we lost our cars, we lost everything. I cleaned houses to help make ends meet. I've done everything possible to rebuild. I know what those families who are now unemployed are facing. Trying to divide their time between taking care of their children, not knowing if their children are going to be educated, and figuring out what they're going to do with their life is the hardest. It's incredibly difficult. And for people who think, oh, we can just work at home, or we're essential, you're an essential employee, it sends the wrong message. Every single person in this country is essential. We are the United States of America. Every one of us is essential. Every one of us is important. And not every single family can afford a computer so that their children can be online at the same time, or Wi-Fi, as Kellyanne was just talking about, to be able to do Zoom all at the same time. So families are suffering, and the education is suffering as well. And as a single mom, this situation is ripping me in two. You cannot be in 2 places at once, physically or mentally. And I'm doing the very best I can to take care of my children. Their father, when they're living with their father, he does a great job taking care of them. But when they're with me, I'm doing everything I can to take care of them, help them prepare for their senior year of high school, make up prom, dealing with whatever else we have to deal with from the shutdowns, and run a company and work. And it's impossible. It's impossible to do what we need to do. So the schools must be reopened. It will stabilize our country. I cannot thank you enough for doing this today and sending this message. And the doctors who I've been working with, they want to do anything they can to help calm the fear that is permeating our country. They understand we have to have a healthy respect for the virus, and we have to be able to live our lives. And they and I will do anything we can to help you with that. Thank you very much.
Great job. Looks like you're doing a good job. Is your mother doing a good job? She good, right? You said the right thing. Okay, great job. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, First Lady, Mr. Vice President, Second Lady, on behalf of the great state of Tennessee and Governor Bill Lee, I want to thank you for all of the help and resources and support that you and your administration have provided us. You guys have been accessible, you've been responsible, and that means the world to us in the states when we're trying to do our jobs. I'm Dr. Lisa Piercy. I'm the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Health. I'm also a pediatrician and a mother of 4. And I know very clearly that education and economic prosperity are key drivers of health. We know in Tennessee that kids have to get back to school and parents have to get back to work. It's paramount for our economy and it's paramount for the health of our nation. And we're doing our part in Tennessee for that effort. And thank you again.
Thank you, and say hello to Bill, please. Thank you. Doctor?
Thank you, Mr. President, First Lady, Vice President, Second Lady. I want to really, today was a really terrific day because it took Americans' children, put them in the center, and said this is not going to be a unilateral and a unifocal, one-dimensional discussion about COVID-19, but a discussion that transcended that single moment and brought in the other issues of mental health, academic health, emotional health, and really said that it's important to the whole child to have the availability of schooling. And I think having that discussion that was multidimensional, having teachers here and students here, and the health commissioners here and the secretaries here was really very helpful, because I think it not only put the child at the center, but also made it clear about how important these other issues are that are beyond COVID-19 in the health and welfare of our children. And so the discussion was terrific, and I think we have a way forward.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you, Mr. President, so much for including me in today's event. I think I'm on now. Thank you for including me so much in today's event. I want to thank you. I want to thank the Vice President, the First Lady, and the Second Lady for your comments and for all the concern you've had for the education of our children. I come today as a parent, as an OBGYN physician, and as the managing partner of my practice. This has been a very scary, but also a very enlightening experience to have walked through. It's been quite the challenge, and I will say quite the challenge. But the first thing I want to say is it's so important to get our children back in school. Our higher education students, our high school students, and our middle school students are so embedded in social media already. What they need is that social interaction with each other and with adults, because without that, I fear what our society is going to look like. The preservation of society is reliant upon the interaction of these children day to day, face to face with each other. I also saw the anxiety of my youngest child, who's here today with me, Macy, back on that side. I saw her anxiety when she came home from college. The anxiety of not knowing how her education would continue, of then trying to set up the Zoom meetings and make it happen, but more importantly, not having the opportunity for those in-person tutorials or that in-personal relationship with a professor to complete her courses. And I think her courses did suffer because of it. She's a good student, and it wasn't dramatic, but I can only imagine what it was like for other students. My eldest child had a learning disability. To try to bring
We've been listening to President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump participate in a national dialogue about reopening America's schools. We're going to take a quick break now. We've got a lot more news ahead. Stay with us. This is CBSN, always on.
In 60 years, we went from about 100,000 factory workers to probably about 7,000.
Off in the distance, you can see some factories that are still humming, but most of them are just kind of abandoned.
The restaurant industry right now is one of the largest and fastest growing industries in America. And yet it continues to be the absolute lowest paying employer in the United States.
Barely anybody's making enough to live.
You were donating plasma to get by.
It's literally a slave wage.
I don't remember growing up like this. My mom didn't have to go to food banks. It's pretty sad.
The biggest names in politics.
Whoa, that's news. Do we have the capacity to deal with what is coming?
Face the questions you want answered.
Are you looking at a bailout? Can you walk the American people through what happens next? Are you saying you did not ever hear of such a deal? Do you need to level with the American people?
Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan.
These are hard, tiring, taxing jobs, even before coronavirus came.
This is my Clorox wipes, my Lysol. I have no idea what I'm walking into. I don't know if the customers are carriers.
I feel privileged to be out here when so many people are out of work.
Did you ever think that you would find yourselves at the front line?
We have the opportunity to bring something valuable to the community, and that feels good.
We have to be willing to change policy on a permanent basis to recognize and honor these workers.
Doesn't seem like it's worth the risk that you endure every day.
I have to do what I can to take care of myself and my family.
If you had the choice, would you stay home?
Maybe, yeah.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
Devastating flooding has reached catastrophic levels.
Rising sea levels are threatening America's coasts.
you would have to take that house and put it on stilts 10 feet tall. If the street is filled with salt water, what difference does it make how high you make your house?
The concentration of the highest rental rates is exactly where the elevation is highest.
This was the evidence to prove that climate gentrification was real.
Pay $1,800 in 5 days or you have to leave. Were you scared?
Yes.
Every single person who stood up and said, I am not paying this rent increase, received an eviction.
Haitians built this place and you're getting kicked out.
Yes.
You can watch CBSN 24/7.
I've got an amazing story to share with you.
I understand you have some breaking news.
How does it all play out?
It's quite an adventure here at CBSN.
It's been a
Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero, joining you from my home studio. Thank you for being with us. The U.S. is nearing 3 million cases of the coronavirus as hospitals in the South and West are grappling with dangerous surges of infections. In Texas, hospitalizations from COVID-19 have more than doubled in the last 2 weeks. Arizona's hospitals are at 89% capacity. Hospitalizations in Florida are also up at least 40% over the same period. In a conversation with the director of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Anthony Fauci warned Americans to remain on high alert.
We are still knee-deep in the first wave of this, and I would say this would not be considered a wave. It was a surge or a resurgence of infections superimposed upon a baseline, Francis, that really never got down to where we wanted to go. If you look at the graphs from Europe, the European Union as an entity, it went up and then came down to baseline. Now they're having little blips, as you might expect, as they try to reopen. We went up, never came down to baseline, and now we're surging back up.
A group of more than 200 scientists are asking the World Health Organization to reconsider its guidance on the airborne spread of COVID-19. Social distancing measures require people to stand at least 6 feet apart. A recent study reveals that without a mask, particles from a cough or sneeze can travel through the air between 6 and 12 feet indoors. Almost 3 million people have been infected with the coronavirus nationwide, resulting in more than 130,000 deaths across the country. CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook has more.
Researchers around the world say the evidence is clear. The coronavirus is likely airborne. When we